Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Mac Kia studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Yes, the Eagles are at OTAs. Geoff Mosher will be here in just a few minutes. We'll talk a little birds with him as the Eagles at OTAs. You know, this time of the year, the Eagles have 2 new coordinators, right? And I was thinking about this morning. On Wednesdays, I'm a guest on Birds 365. So the guys were asking me about the OTAs and my thoughts on, what do you get out of these things? And I said, the Eagles practice in OTAs less than any other team. The maximum, I think, of practices now, or the minimum, is it? Or the maximum? I don't remember. Is 13. I think 13 is the number. I don't know if that's the most you can do or the least you can do. That's the most you can do?
Yeah, so the way it works is that you can't do more than that or the league will ding you.
Yes. So the Eagles do 6. They do the least out of every team in the league.
Correct.
And some would say if you get 13 opportunities, why wouldn't you take all the opportunities? And the Eagles are essentially saying, we don't think these things are all that important. The on-field. Now, they can use the classroom, and they can get into the classroom and show film, study the playbook, yada, yada, yada. But for whatever reason, the Eagles aren't using all 13 of their days. Now, one thing that I question this season, I'm going to ask Geoff Mosher what he thinks, but what is his biggest area of concern? Somebody asked me this question the other day. Okay, what to you is the Eagles' biggest area of concern? And, it's easy to say, well, linebacker, you got 2 new starters, safety, you have 2 new starters, you don't have a lot of depth, yada, yada, yada. But think about this. Andy Reid and his tenure here. A lot of the Eagles, when we think about the Eagles and kind of the jumping off part of the new era of Eagles football, as we all know, it started with Andy Reid. Anything before Andy the Eagles were not a good franchise before Andy Reid. They turned into, anything pre-Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles were just not a good franchise. Anything post-Jeffrey Lurie, or with Jeffrey Lurie, because he's been the only owner, they've turned into a really good franchise. So what are some of the things about the Eagles, when I say concern? So someone said to me, what are your biggest areas of concern? And I didn't give them a position, Geoff Mosher. I gave them this. When Andy's team started to struggle, what happened? They started to get their coaches poached. They lost continuity at the coaching position more so than anything. You look back at those Andy Reid teams, when did they start to struggle? Well, when you took Brad Childress, and then you took Shermer, and you took, basically started to kind of take each Harbaugh, who's the coach in Buffalo, McDermott. When you started to take Andy's coaches is when the team started to kind of take steps back a little bit. So if someone asked me today, which is where I'm asking you, what's my biggest area of concern, I think I have to say you have 2 new coordinators. How is that going to affect this team? And we're seeing the start of OTAs, and the Eagles are not utilizing the 13 days. They are using only 6 days. I'm a little surprised by that. Are you?
No. I mean, it's kind of how they've been doing it for the last few years. And to be honest with you, I've yet to figure this out. I know there's a bowling day. There might be 2 bowling days. So I don't know if that means it's 4 practices and 2 bowling days or 6 practices and 2 bowling days. But either way, I'm not surprised because this is sort of the direction they've been going the last few years, even last year. And also, I knew the schedule about a month and a half ago, like most of us did. But no, this is sort of the way they're going. In fact, on the podcast that Adam and I did that's going to come out tomorrow morning, we sort of discussed, what is the future of OTAs? And in 10 or 20 years, is it even going to be practice on the field? Are they going to be on the field even having a light practice? And I questioned. I don't know. To me, it wouldn't shock me if 10, 15, 20 years, the most they do in OTAs is a walkthrough. Because if you figure they're going to have 18 games, they're going to get rid of those preseason games that they do play now. Maybe there'll be 1. I don't know. It'll make training camp itself probably 6 to 7 weeks instead of 3, right, or 4. And I think the players are going to argue that's plenty of time to get ready for the season and learn the playbook. But the teams are going to argue that they need something in the offseason because it's not like baseball where you just show up and play a game. You got to learn the playbook. You got to learn your coaches. You got to know what they want. And so I think the happy medium will wind up being sort of like, okay, we show up, we do classroom, we do walkthroughs, but we're not like, we're not doing full workout practices, even the way they are now with no hitting or tackling.
If I were to ask you the biggest areas of concern, what would your answers be?
Well, I like what you said about losing coaches and replacing them. I think that's 100% a concern, and it doesn't mean you're worried about it. It's on your radar. They've got a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and I think that's very fair. I would say the second thing that sort of becomes abstract more than just pointing out this player or this position, right, would be handling success. We saw the 2017 team win the Super Bowl. You can argue that the 2018 team's roster was actually better, deeper, stronger, but A, they had lost some coaches. That certainly impacted Carson Wentz, right, with no Reich and no DiFilippo. B, they had brought some new guys in. Michael Bennett was there, I believe, some other guys, and it just didn't have that. I don't think the locker room was the same. Things started to come out about Carson Wentz after he got hurt again, right? It just didn't – it's hard to be only a few teams have done it recently. The Patriots are one. The Chiefs are doing it now. You see a lot of teams become something great and not be able to sustain that. The Eagles have the players to be able to sustain that. But do they in the past, they have not handled success well. And you wonder, can they sustain it going forward this year now? I think it's a fair question.
I want to ask you this question, too. And another area of concern for me, on top of the new coordinators, is do we think they just simply have too many new faces on the defensive side of the ball? Like, you're asking a team that went to the Super Bowl last year who had the number 2 defense in the league, and whether you like the coordinator or not, they statistically had the second best defense in football. You are now replacing many of the names. This isn't a situation where you're keeping all the same guys and you hated the coordinator and you're just bringing a new coordinator in. The new coordinator is now also having to pick at least 2 new linebackers, 2 new safeties, and most likely another player, well, definitely a tackle. So is there too many new faces on the defensive side of the ball?
I think it's a fair point. There were a lot of new faces last year too. I mean, Bradbury was new, and Kaiser White was new. Marcus Epps wasn't new, but he was stepping into the starting spot for the first time. Hassan Reddick was new, so you did have some newness there. But this is sort of different, Mike. I agree with you because it's all kind of funneled right up the middle. And Jordan Davis was new last year, but from Carter to your 2 linebackers to your 2 safeties. So, yeah, there's a lot of newness there, and it's right up the gut of the defense. And like you just said, new defensive coordinator figure it out. Now, they have talent. It's not like these guys are a bunch of bums, so that helps them. Howie did a nice job of bringing some talent in, but sometimes that takes time to gel and everybody to understand each other. And I do think that's a fair concern.
Clay Harbor was on the podcast, and I asked you guys to go check out the latest episode of Inside the Birds on all your podcasting platform, where Adam and Geoff were joined by former Eagle tight end Clay Harbor, and he talked about the culture of the Philadelphia Eagles and about the way that helps, and he credited that for the team's success. And I talked about it. You go back to the Andy Reid era, and there's 2 eras of Eagles football, kind of like Jeffrey Lurie and then pre-Jeffrey Lurie. What does Clay think, and how does he think that has kind of carried over from Andy to, he had the little speed bump there with Chip, but Doug, and now where they are now?
Yeah, Clay pointed out that, the best teams.
And by the way, just for disclosure, Clay played here in Philadelphia, so he can speak to this.
Right, but he also becomes an extra sort of expertise because he also played for Jacksonville prior to Doug, so it's a different regime he played for. He played, actually, I didn't even remember this, but he was on the Patriots, he was on the Lions, and then there was another team. He wound up playing for 5 different teams. So he's seen, and he's a you can tell just listening to him, he's an observant guy. So it's not like he just went to these places and played. He really sort of studied what they do. And now he does post-game for the Bears. He's from Chicago. And he also does Jaguar stuff too. So he sees a lot of teams. He understands the landscape of the NFL.
Well, real quick, because you mentioned he played for Philly, which is a upper tier, franchise. He played for Jacksonville,
Yes.
which is thought to be kind of lower tier. New England,
Right.
top of the heap at that time. Detroit, kind of bottom tier. New
Yeah.
Orleans, kind of in the middle tier. So
Right.
he has definitely seen the highest, the lowest, the in-betweens.
Yeah, and what he talked about is the best teams that he's been on and observed are the ones that understand how to build from the inside out, which is a Andy Reid / Joe Banner / Jeffrey Lurie. I mean, it's really the Reid philosophy brought to those guys. But building in the trenches, be strong in the defensive line, be strong in the offensive line, and you give the rest of your team a better chance to succeed, as opposed to being really strong at wide receiver and being strong at safety, but not having good defensive line or offensive line. In fact, he talked about the Bears, right? The Bears just signed TJ Edwards, who he's gotten to know just from his time with the Eagles and being a Bears post-game guy. TJ Edwards is a good linebacker. And then they went and spent a ton of money on Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills, Terrell's brother, right? Two great linebackers. And he's concerned about how well they'll be able to play, not because he thinks they're not worth it, but because there's no defensive lineman in that Bears front that helps keep linebackers clean, like there were with the Eagles last year. So Clay's biggest concern for TJ Edwards is all of a sudden he's going to have just behemoth offensive linemen in his face all the time because the Bears don't have very good defensive tackles. So that observation led to our discussion about how the Eagles may not do it perfectly, but they philosophically do it correctly by building from the inside out.
Yeah, Jeff, we're talking with Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, on, of course, Football at 4. I'd like to hear, let our listeners get a little bit more insight on what he thought of some of these new players like Sidney Brown, because I know he knew him pretty well. Kind of get your thoughts on where Brown might fit in and what he kind of sees for Brown, because I think he's an interesting guy because of the position that he plays and where we're talking about all these new faces.
Yeah, so Clay went to the Senior Bowl. I mean, it's part of his thing the last year or two where he's trying to make himself into a better NFL analyst. So he's just taking it upon himself to go to these events and act and trust what his eyes tell him. And, plus being in Chicago, he gets to see Illinois football. So he knew Sidney Brown could play in a two-deep defense. He knew was really smart, good traits, can do a lot of things well. At the Senior Bowl, he felt that he saw a coverage acumen to Sidney Brown that maybe wasn't visible so much in the Illinois defense, because their other safety who got drafted in the second round, I think by Washington, was more of the coverage safety in that defense, whereas Sidney Brown was asked to be more like a traditional safety. But he felt after watching Sidney at the Senior Bowl that he saw a guy who could pretty much do anything that the modern safety can do. Yes, he's only 5'9", 5'10", so obviously that'll be a little bit of a restriction, but physically and mentally, he's really impressed with the kid and his makeup.
I know he put out a list, Clay did, of his top tight ends. He has Dallas Goedert as the number 2 tight end in football coming into this season. He ranked him number 2 today. But I know on the podcast he really talked a lot about Dan Arnold. Are you surprised that he thinks Arnold or thinks so highly of Arnold? Do you picture Arnold being a factor on this team?
I was stunned. Adam first brought it up that Arnold could contend with Grant Calcaterra for the number 3 spot. And I sort of, it's not that I disagreed or argued with Adam. I just said, usually a team's gonna favor its draft pick, and you saw Calcaterra last year when he got healthy, and as the season went on, be able to go across the zone, catch the ball, turn upfield. He did some good things, and even sort of adequately block at times, which I think is good when you're that late of a pick, a day 3 pick, and you can do that. And it means you might have a decent future. And I still think he's got that. But obviously, Dan Arnold has a good vertical ability for a tight end. And Clay Harbor sort of shocked both of us because Clay, who, again, studies a lot of Jacksonville, and that's where Dan was, believes that Arnold can block a little bit better than maybe he's given credit for, too. So that's something that we have to see. It's not something Adam and I heard from personnel people, but maybe, Clay has the eye for it, and we'll see. But if Arnold can block a little bit and add a downfield element, explosive element to that number 3 wide receiver or tight end spot, then I suppose it could be a pretty good competition to watch in camp.
Yeah, that one is something that's interesting. And then, of course, already at the OTAs, everybody's looking at the new guys and everything. But Jordan Davis, a guy that was here last year, and I guess really, I don't know what to make of him. He didn't really make the impact that we had hoped he had made. I don't know what kind of impact you do hope he makes, given the position that he plays.
So this is a good example of a guy that, we've learned throughout many years of watching OTAs not to overreact to OTAs. We've been told he's in good shape, which is great. Told his weight's down, which is great. That's awesome. There's a lot of time between now and camp and then the season opener. And this guy's got a ways to go as far as you can be in shape and you can be down in your weight, but you still got to prove that you can play, 20, 40 snaps, 10 snaps in a row without losing your technique. And then over the course of a game, more snaps in the rotation, because he really needs to be the guy who keeps those linebackers clean, or else they're going to be in trouble up the middle on defense against the run. And again, this is what sticks out to me, which is surprising after what they went through last year. There's really no backup Jordan Davis on the team other than Noah Ellis, who I don't know is going to make the team, but they really have a goal that can get in there. I know Jalen Carter, they say he can play it, but I'm talking like a real mammoth run stuffing, two gapping nose tackle who, let's say because the offense is moving it pretty well.
Yeah.
You're facing Patrick Mahomes. Eventually Jordan Davis has to come off the field no matter what shape he's in. You got to get your second string line in there. Who's that guy that's going to be the Jordan Davis 2.0?
And look, obviously Jalen Carter being the story that he was, he would have been maybe a top 2-3 pick, and then he falls, then you make the trade to get him. There's going to be a lot of eyes on him and what kind of impact he can make, and how are they going to use him? Is he going to play next to Fletcher Cox? Is he going to play with Jordan Davis? To try to recreate that Georgia stuff. I think watching what they end up doing with him moving forward is going to be interesting too. And I'm assuming, this is where these OTAs I think are important. Getting a player like that into a routine of this is what your life's about to become. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. OTAs are most important for rookies and newcomers. There's nothing Jason Kelce is going to learn in these 6 practices, or he's going to do in these 6 practices, outside of maybe developing a rapport with the new right guard, whether it's Tyler Steen or whoever, just starting to get a feel for what that guy's like when it's not Isaac Seumalo. But it's not like Jason Kelce's. There's a whole lot more he's going to learn besides that.
Yeah, Steen, Juergens, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I always say this about OTAs, Jeff. You're not winning any jobs. You're not, making the team. But I think you could be the guy that you might not be on the radar, but you might say, hey, this, I don't know, give me undrafted rookie free agent who people like. You know what I'm saying? Like that type level of player. Hey, this guy really opened my eyes. I want to make sure that I watch him more when we get to camp in August because
100%. That was Reed Blankenship last year. I mean, we didn't know about Reed Blankenship until we noticed in training camp that he was running ahead like Jaquaski Tart and everything like that. And then when we went and looked at into it, we were told, yeah, this guy, we could see the light bulb went on for him pretty early at OTAs. So we felt the confidence to be able to give him more, responsibility once training camp started. So yeah, you can. And by the way, there have been some occasions where we would find out, from a personnel person or in retrospect that a guy that they drafted, high first round, second round, that they could tell in OTAs was not the guy they thought they were getting. That has happened before. You never write a guy off after OTAs, but you can certainly see enough in tape that the coaches watch every day. In 6, 7, 8, 9 practices, used to be more. If the light bulb isn't coming on, or if a guy's physical abilities don't translate right off the bat, that it could be cause for concern.
Geoff Mosher, check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast. It is now out now with Clay Harbor, their special guest. Real quick, I was on vacation. I was on the plane when this happened. I was actually getting ready to take off. There was a report that the Eagles were working out DJ Fluker. Did anything come of that?
Just a workout, as far as we know. I don't believe there's not been a signing or anything like that. But, obviously with the Eagles losing so many offensive linemen, right, from Dillard to Seumalo to somebody else whose name I'm forgetting, they need some depth.
I just thought it was an interesting name. He played at Alabama, was a first-round pick, but I don't know if you saw the video of him. And the guy, apparently he dropped like 40 pounds. I mean, he looked like he was in unbelievable shape. Hasn't played in the league in like 2 years. I guess he could be a swing guy, play interior, play some tackle. I thought it made sense from that aspect and the fact that he had played for
Jeff Stoutland.
Stoutland at you
Yes.
can tell I'm not in football mode. Jeff
Okay.
Stoutland in the summertime. All right, Geoff Mosher at Geoff P. Mosher. I know you're a Phillies guy, Geoff Mosher. Are you in panic mode, or are you just kind of like, it's May?
Well, I mean, it's hard to accept and reconcile that this team is the same as last year's team, sort of like from a record standpoint, when after everything they went through last September, October, and then getting better. But I don't have a person who I don't think it's Tomper's fault. I don't think it's Dombrowski's fault, and I don't think there's a savior. I think the guys who you expect to play well, and starts with your two starting pitchers, really, and then your shortstop, they got to play better, or else this thing doesn't work.
I agree with that because I'm seeing a lot of Rob Thompson. They fired Girardi right about this time last year, and it's like, you just hired this guy, and now people want to fire this guy, and I'm like, I came up with a list of at least 10 things that are higher on my list of blame than Rob Thompson.
Yeah. I would agree with that. But man, it's really disappointing to see him start this way. I mean, it's really
well. You signed Trey Turner for $300 million. He's hitting $240.
Yeah.
I mean, those type of things. You're like, come on! I was so excited to see how he fit into this lineup, and then I think the Hoskins getting hurt has really. And I'm not the biggest Hoskins fan in the world, but I thought that
he does bring something to the team.
Well,
You're right.
I didn't like him hitting in the 2-hole. I was much more looking forward to him hitting 4 or 5 somewhere in that spot, and I think that has really decimated the middle of this lineup.
I can't disagree. They should be playing better though. If Nola, Wheeler, and Suarez are not good pitchers, so far they haven't been.
You're not making the playoffs.
Then there's really nothing anybody can do about that. They've just got to be better.
Yeah. If Nola, Wheeler, and Suarez are not good, and Walker, who they signed to be that guy, if Turner and Schwarber and this lineup is hitting 166 and 240, I got news for you. You can insert any manager you want in there. They're not making the playoffs with that kind of production.
Right. Now I guess just going forward, Tomper may have to push some buttons, and that's a manager's job to sort of manage it and figure it out, and hopefully he can do that.
All right, buddy. Geoff Mosher.
All right, man.
Good stuff. OTAs continue this week and into next week, and he'll be back for more football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.